It will be coming. This ability to automatically reroute and obviously and obstacle avoidance. We're not there yet. I think there needs to be a lot more data sets collected, much bigger models for these AI models to work from. But I see it in the future for sure. And you will need the data coming in from all of these different sensors.
Hello, and welcome back to the AI Captain's Log, the podcast where we chart the transition from traditional seamanship to the age of AI and maritime autonomy. I'm your host, Elizabeth Fortunato. Picture this. You're navigating a 130-foot expedition yacht or a mid-sized long-range cruiser through an unanchored coral pass in the South Pacific or an unstable inlet in the U.S. East Coast after a storm. Your traditional downward-looking depth sounder reads 40 feet, right up until the exact second your keel strikes a migrating shoal that your static 3D chart swore was deep water. Downward-looking depth sounders only tell you where you were, not where you're going. It's like driving a car on the highway at speeds while looking strictly out at the floorboards, which is fun note. I did drive a car in college without a floorboard. I had cardboard on it. So I can experience this, this in the real world. So now imagine your bridge computer painting a real-time, high-resolution 3D picture of the water column and seafloor up to 1,000 meters over half a nautical mile ahead of your bow. Every ping generates an instantaneous underwater terrain model, identifying shallow reefs, submerged shipping containers, and dynamic sandbars before you ever reach them. This is the operational reality of 3D forward-looking sonar. And the transformation doesn't stop at vessel safety. Through crowdsourced bathymetry initiatives, the very sonar data gathered during a weekend cruise or an ocean crossing can automatically feed into Seabed 2030, which is an ambitious global effort to map 100% of the ocean seafloor. And we'll get into that too. To walk us through how 3D sonar is redefining the tactical helm and closing the gaps on global bathymetry, we are joined by Alexia Fountain. Fountain or Fountain?
Fountain, yeah.
Okay, perfect. Alexia is the yachting and cruise account manager of FarSounder, a global company specializing in advanced 3D forward-looking sonar technology that provides a real-time view of what lies ahead of the vessels beneath the surface. FarSounder's system assists captains in detecting hazards, assessing seabed conditions, and navigates with greater confidence. With experience supporting marine technology across the superyacht, leisure, and commercial sectors, Alexia works closely with owners, captains, cruise operators, shipyards, and bridge integration partners to understand the operational challenges faced by modern vessels and how emerging technologies can provide practical solutions. Her role places her at the forefront of conversations around the adoption of advanced navigation systems, from new builds and retrofits through to the evolving expectation of today's bridge teams. For the AI Captain's Log, Alexia brings a valuable perspective on how sensor fusion is shaping the future of navigation. Her expertise illustrates how AI-enabled systems, advanced sonar, electronic charts, and complementary technologies are working together to reduce cognitive workload, reaction times, and enhance safety at sea, while ensuring captains remain firmly at the center of decision-making process. Alexia, welcome to the log.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for that lovely introduction.
You're
How
quite
are
welcome.
you?
I'm great. I'm great today. It's a little rainy here, but I'll take the rain sometimes. It's nice. Nice break for the heat of the summer.
Yes, well, unusually or not so, but everybody in the UK always loves speaking about the weather, and it's giving us a blissful summer. But obviously, everybody's finding something to moan about that, as we do. But there we go.
Yeah, I heard there's a heat wave. I did hear that.
It's quite warm, yes.
Yeah.
I no longer have a garden. It's just a deado out there.
That's not the fun kind of heat
It'll
wave.
come back.
True. So, all right, so let's get into it. So, Alexia, traditional mechanical scanning sonars sweep back and forth, like a searchlight, which creates motion blur and latency when the vessel is pitching or traveling at high speeds. FarSounder's Argos series uses a phase array transducer to process a complete 3D volumetric image ahead of the vessel in a single ping, which is quite the mouthful. Hopefully you'll break that down for us.
Yeah.
From a hydrodynamics and single processing standpoint, how does this single ping 3D process solve the latency problem for a captain operating at higher speeds, which for me, I'm a trawler, so I operate at low speeds, so it's not a problem. But those vessels and those super yachts that can go up to 25, 20, 23 knots, how does this problem get solved with a single ping 3D processing?
Okay, so the key difference is traditional mechanically scanned sonar. It builds an image sequentially. So it's effectively rotating or sweeping across the entire field of view that it wants to capture. And that means it's literally taking different portions of that area It's making different images along the way. So it's being captured at different moments in time. So for a vessel that's pitching and rolling and effectively in dynamic seas or moving forward, the boat and the water are constantly changing positions between the two of them. So that obviously creates, as you said, distortion and a latency by the time that information is effectively fed back and creating that image. So it's showing you, where you were rather than where they are now often. So with FarSounder, our architecture approaches this problem differently. And using that phase array transducer, it's effectively sending out one acoustic ping and effectively collects the entire field of view in essentially all at the same time, rather than taking individual slices. So that means it's rather than stitching it all together from lots of different images, it's one measurement and target detection from the entire field of view in one go. So that means we can feed back pretty much in real time. So a signal processing perspective, it eliminates that time skew that exists between the last and the first mechanically scanned image. So we eliminate all of that. And instead we give you a consistent snapshot of that underwater environment ahead of the vessel. So that's especially important at cruising speeds, because if you consider a vessel that's traveling at 20 knots, and that's going to be covering roughly 10 meters every second. So it takes several seconds to capture that field of view. You're not going to be getting an image of where that vessel is now. It's going to be where it was a few minutes ago. So it's effectively reducing the time for the information in a much more efficient way, so that with a single ping, you've got a current representation, no matter what the seas are doing. So where the vessel is in relation to pitching, rolling, or moving forwards.
That's fantastic. So in terms of, because I think I was telling you before we started recording, is that I've seen the forward-looking, not 3D, but forward-looking 2D sonar on other vessels. How far typically forward does a regular 2D sonar look compared to yours in the 3D? I mean, I think 2D, 3D is probably not the differentiator in that piece of it. It's the,
In terms of how far they can see, it's relatively comparable. But what you're going to get is clarity of image, depth of image, and something that the human brain can actually process a lot more easily. In 2D, you're going to see something, but it's not going to be initially clear of exactly what it is. So you might be getting, a ping back, but it's not going to show you perhaps defined images. With the 3D, and obviously with the way we do it with a single ping, you're going to very quickly see exactly what it is rather than that there's just something there. So if you're approaching, for example, quay wall, you're going to start to see quite a defined image and understand that there is a depth scale there rather than just a blob that you want to avoid.
That's fantastic. So, thinking about when I talked to the Proteus and their Apollo core, their technology, what they're doing is they're training their systems to identify what these things possibly are. How are you all doing something similar with yours so that you can actually say, okay, this is with it being underwater, not just the image presentation, but if it is a hazard or something that someone has to be concerned about, say an object that's there or, a rise in the seafloor that you weren't expecting, perhaps. Are you all working on the identification of the objects as well? With your technology?
I don't think we're going to get to a stage where we effectively label what they are, because obviously we don't want to take the complete decision making away from the human. I think that's when you start to get into dangerous territory, when you're completely feeding all of the information, telling them what it is. We still need to have some sort of human interaction and intervention. However, and this is where the crossover, and I know you've done some chats with people who've done like AUVs, USVs and things. So it is important for them to understand whether it's a load of bubbles, and that is something that typically sonar does have an issue with. It's, wash from propellers, that can actually show up as a solid obstacle, whereas in fact it's not, it's just multiple bubbles. So that is something we will potentially be looking at trying to classify or training our technology or reference, or which it is more than just like it's an obstacle. So no, we're not going to get to a point where we're labeling and telling people exactly what they are. They need to be able to, determine these obstacles for themselves. But there are certain situations, as in prop wash that we will want to try and differentiate more.
Yeah, I've been talking to Ocean Research, which for the Schmidt Institute, and they had to speak out wash, and this goes into where you place your sensors, is that, or your transducers, or whatever you want to probably call them. But they actually had to retrofit their bow. They had a bulbous bow, and they had to actually haul out and retrofit on their research vessel, their bow, because they were getting too many bubbles when they were trying to do their down scans. So they actually, because they're doing ocean research and they're doing seabed mapping, which goes into some of our next topics about that. So they really had to be very concerned about how that bulbous bow was producing all those bubbles so they could get better, clear images. So,
Yeah, and
there is something to that for sure.
And it is worth noting that, where you place your sonar as well. So, for instance, you're talking about the bulbous bow. We've had scenarios where they've then put, say, an underwater light right above it, and you're going to get effectively, I say turbulence, obviously it's not quite the right term, but you get what I mean. So the wash coming over something placed above your sonar is going to affect what it is able to see, because that movement within the water, if it's creating a hydrodynamic effect, it's going to stop that sonar being able to receive the incoming ping effectively. So it is crucial as to where you place your sonar in relation to other things. And we do say, if you're going to put it in a bulbous bow, please don't put something directly above, because you're going to effectively blind your sonar.
Yeah. So, and you guys, I did say in the introduction, you do it as a new build or also as a retrofit.
Yeah,
So
we can do
you
both.
have, yeah. So you can do it in both ways if someone wanted to get that technology on their vessel. And just out of quick curiosity, I know you're seeing it somewhat in the commercial market, but is there a differentiation between what you're seeing in terms of people using this technology and maybe scientific versus, I don't know, USVs and military versus commercial? Is there, kind of an industry that's using this technology more right now?
I think everybody knows that the defence is a massively growing market. Anything autonomy is not just for defence, but being able to deliver things to remote communities on islands, or in if there's been a disaster, trying to get supplies out to them, relief efforts. So there's a lot of applications for autonomous vessels that don't necessarily mean it's part of the defence scape. So that's definitely something, a sector that's improving or increasing. But, across all the other sectors, super yacht, cruise, commercial, if you don't want to hit stuff, then we're quite useful.
Yeah, as when you and I first talked before the podcast, and we were talking about it, the Woods Hollow incident had just occurred.
Yeah.
And for anybody who's not aware, I think it was a Jamaican flagged vessel that's up, and this is in the New England area, if anybody does not know. And it's through, I don't know if you call it a narrow, but it's through a narrow passage that gets some pretty heavy current in there. So the seabed could change frequently. And I do believe that yeah, exactly. So I do believe that is an area that really local knowledge makes a huge difference, but which will make an even bigger difference if you have this type of technology so that you don't run aground.
Yeah, I mean, local knowledge, and I think that's sometimes where complacency comes in. You've It's your home port. You come in and out all the time. You think, hey, I know this like the back of my hand. And then you have an unexpected event, be that a vessel going down, be that a huge storm surge. You might be in the mouth of a river, and that can wash debris down there that you have no idea that is down there. And suddenly a landscape that like the back of your hand is completely unknown and is throwing hazards that you just can't see and you just don't know are there. So if you've got a FarSounder on board, then that takes away the risk of the unknown.
Yeah, which is, for a lot of us that are in murky water, and that's not an analogy. A lot of us that are in not so clear water, like the Chesapeake Bay and other areas that you may not, or they have like a little washout, for instance, at the mouth of the Mississippi, huge shipping area, where you have a lot of washout, or any other areas where you have that, you're blind most of the time to what's underneath of you. And it's, and you're trying to trust a chart, which, as we know, going in, and we're going to talk a little bit about the Seabed 2030, but when you're trying to trust a chart and you're trying to trust really that information you have available to you, sometimes it's outdated, it's not clear. And, you're looking at, or you're calling into the marina, or for wherever you're going into a channel, you're trying to find out, if there's any local changing conditions or anything, and then you may not always know. So, especially this area around here, I feel like your technology should be on every boat.
Well, in Europe at the moment, we were experiencing some extreme heat and weather and droughts. And I think the Danube, which typically has a lot of river cruises, and also is used, to move commercially and things up and down the river, they are having to block certain parts because it's too shallow, or people cannot safely assess whether they can get these vessels up and down, and to risk grounding up in the river like that. I mean, nobody wants another Panama Canal situation with the Evergreen container. I mean, that wasn't running aground, that was purely just getting stuck.
Right.
But 3-point turn didn't quite work.
Yeah.
But in drought situations as well. So there's a lot of environmental factors that can suddenly make, well-used routes, even shipping routes, suddenly become not what they once were. So we can assist obviously with minimizing and mitigating those unknown obstacles.
Yeah. So one more question before we get onto the
Oh.
seabed, because I'm really curious about this. So where are you seeing the highest usage of your technology? Is it in Europe, or is it here in the US, or somewhere else, or Asia maybe? Where do you see it? Or Australia? Because they've got a lot of shipping and a lot of boating there too. So where are you seeing it most applied?
Yeah, so typically a lot of places in the Mediterranean. So if we're talking like the south of France, and places, it's well charted. People go there a lot. Also, it gets deep off the coast pretty quick. So yeah, I mean, by all means, have a FarSounder on board, because there may be something that you don't know that's there. But on the whole, it's pretty safe cruising grounds. There's not too many obstacles that you're not going to expect. So what we're seeing more and more is, what's the ultimate gift that you can give someone who owns a super yacht? Well, probably the gift of going somewhere that no one else has been. So we're starting to see, more and more exploration into Arctic areas. And aside from ice flows, which you just cannot predict, so much of that area of the world hasn't been charted at all. And then when you start to get into places, like the Caribbean, anywhere that's coral or shifting sands, then we're going to start to show real benefit. And it's these areas that typically, if the vessel is going to be going in that area, we tend to be getting a lot of inquiries.
Be really interesting to see, and I don't know if you have this information, how much is the seafloor shifting with the different, extreme weather conditions, and, how much are things actually changing? And I don't know, because we don't have data really right now on historical seabeds, so there's some to compare it to. And I know NOAA here in the US is using satellite imagery to get into shallower areas, and they're kind of combining all that to really understand what's happening with the seabed. But, really we don't know that overall impact right now. We only can, hope that by 2030 we'll have a better idea of what that baseline is.
Mm-hmm.
And then we can start looking at changes. But, I know some areas we look at changes because they do change frequently, and they're small enough that we can map maybe more frequently. And I'm talking like every 5 years. It's not that frequent. That would be amazing if it was every 5 years. But I'm just curious if you're hearing anything in your industry, because you're more in tune with that, if we're getting more dynamic seafloors shifting with the storms, the way that they're becoming more intense, with the sort of the changes in the weather patterns, kind of what's happening at a global perspective, if you're seeing more of that or hearing more of that.
Well, there does certainly seem to be more extreme weather reporting. We've had mudslides in Europe as well, in Spain, which have surely got to affect sort of some of the outlets into the sea for some of these rivers. Being very, very honest with you, I don't know, because I haven't specifically started to look at that. FarSounder obviously been going for about 25 years. We had our 25th anniversary this year.
Congrats.
So, it would be interesting, and I'm sure at some point one of the organizations would love to, commission maybe using our data that we've collected over the 25 years. We can look back and go, right, so this is one of the very first data sets that we collected for X location. Let's compare it now to 25 years later and see whether there has been a big change. I think that would be a really interesting thing to look at.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. And now we have, the underwater autonomous vessels that are looking really more closely at that, and really going down underneath and getting getting close to the seabed, not just from the surface standpoint. So we do have those areas that I know are being mapped. I mean, a lot of them are being mapped for, minerals and other things, and, things we can get out of those areas. But
Yeah.
they're also being mapped for, shipping lanes and for other areas that we're really needing to make sure are clear.
But then yachts don't tend to stay in shipping lanes, It's very nice to make use of those shipping lanes. You're in deep water. But I'm pretty sure the owner and his wife and guests on board don't want to anchor up and have lunch surrounded by shipping containers going by every 5 minutes. So they tend to want to go and find the little bays. So yeah, they will use them to access certain areas. But then after a while, for a super yacht or leisure yacht, they start to become not so useful sticking to shipping lanes because they're not going to take you to the places that you want to go.
Yeah, not
And
always, no.
no. And as I said, with the med getting so sort of congested, I think unless you're there to be seen, if you really want to truly go and enjoy some peace and quiet and undiscovered, coves, bays, and locations, then you'll want to go off the beaten track quite literally. And that's where we can sort of literally help you see what's there and make sure that you can get in, maybe even closer than you thought you could,
Yeah.
because a lot of these coastal locations haven't ever been mapped using modern technology. And that is the beauty of being involved in things like Seabed 2030. A yacht being a yacht, not having to do anything special. By having a FarSounder Argos system on board, they can contribute anonymously to all these initiatives. So they can help literally make a difference for everybody on the planet by just going about being a yacht. And when you think about all the bad press that super yachts get, wouldn't it be really nice to go, hey, just by doing something without having to do anything special, we are helping to map our coastal locations, of which, over 70% haven't been mapped at all. So, it's a really good thing that they can do just by being a yacht.
Yeah. And it's going into that Seabed 2030. I've talked about it in a couple of different my podcasts. I haven't really had a dedicated podcast for it, but it really is a very ambitious initiative dedicated to compiling, and making a completely free, accessible, high resolution bathymetric map of the entire ocean floor by 2030. I don't know if we're going to get there. I love the ambitious goal.
It's quite ambitious. I mean, it's been interesting to see it increase. I think it's now sitting at about 26%.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the last thing I read too.
Mm-hmm. So that's quite a jump from where it was when they first started, which I want to say it was about 16, but I would have to check that. But it's, so from the, they are making a difference.
Yeah.
They literally are making a difference. And, we literally know more about the surface of the moon or space than we do about these oceans that we have. And so by bringing together all these hydrographic offices, the research institutions, commercial operators, recreational mariners, anybody that has an Argos on board, we can help fill in those gaps really easily. And so we fully support it. And when people choose to opt in, we will share our customers' collected bathymetric.
Yeah, so basically you're transferring, and it doesn't even have to be super yachts, quite honestly. It can be, somebody who's a cruiser, who's out there doing this and really wants to get that good look and wants to get into these private coves. I mean, I can see the use of the technology on be really useful. I don't know if they'd invest in it, but any of these yachting clubs that have vessels that you can rent, all these kind of big companies that have these yachts you can go rent for a week or two into the Caribbean and probably other areas too. I've seen some stuff going on and the Puget Sound as well.
Mm-hmm.
But we can transform these private vessels into basically active survey platforms.
Yeah, that's exactly
supporting
what they
these
become.
missions. Yeah, and feeding this depth data into your models. And then I want to ask you about this because I think one thing that people don't also maybe fully understand, and I understand better as I'm researching all this the last several months, is that when you understand what's underneath your hull better, you can also really map to fuel efficient routing. You get better weather accuracy because all of these things are impacted, wave height, all of those things are impacted, not just by what's happening on the surface, but what's happening underneath of you. So having this data is super important, not only from, sort of the Seabed 2030 initiative, but really for your own safety.
Mm-hmm.
So the more we can collect, the better. So let me ask you about that data collection, because I know people are always so concerned about what data is being collected and how it's being put into the cloud and how it's being used. So can you talk a little bit about before you push that data? Because one of the things that you're not just doing is you're you don't just have technology, you're actually a data collection right now. You
Yeah, we
have all
are.
this
Yeah.
information, and then you push that up to IHO, which is the International Hydrographic Organization data center. So that's where a lot of people are pushing this data up, not just you all, but other people are collecting this data, are pushing that there. But you need to go through some type of validation and sort of, scrubbing of the data and make sure it doesn't have personal information, or anything like that. So
exactly. So our philosophy is that, the participation happen largely in the background. We don't want anybody to be having to do anything to manually export, upload, perform any post-processing. And crucially, it is an opt-in for the sharing program. They do not have to participate in the local history mapping unless they wish to. But if they do choose to participate, that synchronization, which occurs when it's uploaded, because it's to a cloud-based platform that we use, whenever that bridge computer has connectivity, we remove any identifiable data. So nothing that is shared is going to be, personal or pertinent data. Can see themselves what they've contributed, but everybody else just gets an overall. And any sort of overlapping sensor observations. So it's taking multiple from multiple vessels rather than just one. So this is where it's actually making it much, much better. It's not one hydrographic survey vessel going up and down and taking it from one calibrated sensor. It's actually using it from the global fleet. So every time a vessel that's opted in passes that place, again, they are constantly providing real-time data again. And so all of that, it kind of adds layers and adds more and more sort of regulation, as it were, rather than just coming from one source.
yes, going back, I'm really excited to see, like we were talking about how it progresses over the years and what we can learn from it. But when we're really thinking about, kind of back to the helm, sort of, what you're seeing it on either, like I said, a cruising couple or, boat that's out there, even a fishing vessel that's, constantly going offshore, or you're trying to go into, unfamiliar harbors. When you combine those 3D forward-looking sonar images that you have with, let's think about above water vision systems. So you've got your cameras, maybe you've got CAI or something like that technology on board. How does this complete sensor fusion stack turn what used to be high stress navigation into supportive automated sort of images at the helm? Because that's really the exciting part of it, when you could actually have this extra eyes, not just what you can see, but this extra eyes looking out for you and helping you.
Precisely that. So when you start to think about, as you referenced then, sensor stacking. So it's a bit like us. We think we have eyes, we have ears, we have nose. Okay, all of these things are effectively sensors. So similar thing on a vessel. What one can do then overlays the capability of another one. So if you can't see, you can hear. So when you can see above the water, but you can't see below, by adding more and more sensors in, one will fill in those gaps. So absolutely, by stacking up different sensors, radar, camera, sonar, you're getting a complete, almost 360 picture of wherever your vessel's going, and even been. So with CAI, their technology is fascinating, because their model is trained to identify all these different targets above the water. So you might have, a man overboard, you've got a buoy. I know you say those differently to how we do navigational, or other vessels. So, that's going to be picking up all of those different things. But it's not going to be able to see a partly submerged shipping container. It's not going to be able to see, ice under the water. So by stacking your sonar and a camera, you can see a much, much clearer picture. And we can overlay all of that onto one display.
Yeah, so you guys integrate into that, MDF or MFD.
Yes.
Sorry, not MDF, MFD.
Yeah,
I told you I do that sometimes.
You got into construction.
Yeah. Right.
So, so it can, we've now got our Sonar Lite, which means that you can also have it on a tablet or handheld device, but also any bridge computer. We will integrate, and you can have your third-party API license. So you can have us on your bridge computer overlaying over your electronic charts, incorporating your camera targets with CAI, incorporating radar targets as well with people like Takaro Blue. And then you can also have underwater with FarSounder's Argos, all on one display. Because who wants to be trying to, work out multiple displays?
Yes.
By making it as and they will all be given different color coding, so you can individualize, and you can adapt that however suits you best. Because by putting it all on one display, we can try and reduce that cognitive load of the bridge crews having to constantly flick between different screens. And when you think, it might only be a few seconds between screens, but you can miss something. So having it all there on the one screen, it's there and much easier for the human brain to process.
That whole idea that you can have this integrated view not only supports the human, the human and sort of processing of this, but if we ever get to the point where we can have automatic detection of, when you're on autopilot or you're on these other technologies, and then automatic rerouting and detection of different things, that it could be, we talked about a sort of a whale migration pattern or a shipping container that you're not seeing at night. How is that all going to help you safely navigate through these different conditions
I
where you may not see it?
expect that it is coming, much like driverless cars. It will be coming. This ability to automatically reroute and obviously and obstacle avoidance. We're not there yet. I think there needs to be a lot more data sets collected, much bigger models for these AI models that you need to work from. But I see it in the future for sure. And you will need the data coming in from all of these different sensors. You're going to have multiple sensors feeding in. So an interesting thing I heard is safety at sea. So operating safely is relative. It's often operating safely within the conditions that are there. What is safe for those conditions? So obviously by having more data coming in from more locations and around the boat makes that operational safety and the decisions that you can make in that situation a lot easier and a lot quicker for the human brain to work out, or not the human brain when we eventually get there.
Because honestly, if you're just like a cruising couple like my husband and I, there's a certain number of hours you're on watch. There's a certain number of hours that you're going to be at the helm because you do get tired. Your brain gets tired of processing all that information. Your brain gets tired of just looking and being aware, and and cars and driving. But really, you've got a lot of ocean around you. You've got a lot of capability to just you don't have to really stay in a lane. So the idea that you could actually just go out there a little more freely and have something assist you so that maybe you do want to do a longer passage. Maybe you do want to be offshore to make it quick up to the coast or whatever you want to do. And it's just the two of you. Or you have a light crew, maybe it's just three. And you want to make sure that you're getting enough rest between your shifts and all that so that you can remain safe and alert. And that's, I think, the biggest thing is having alert. Because even if you're awake, sometimes, if it's 2:00 in the morning and that's your shift, alert is a little, questionable.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's where, when you see you've got AI assistants coming into everyday life.
Yeah.
I expect, we will start to see people developing models for almost like an AI assistant on board, maybe like a third member of crew or something, a virtual member of crew. I don't know, but I can see that sort of being the next sort of area that will be developed.
Well, it's very funny because I took a certification course because I'm in IT for being a AI consultant. It's really not very technical, but it really opened my eyes a lot to all the different things that people are using AI for, and which I love because so many different uses. But one of the things that I did for my project, because we had to do a project and present it to everyone, is that I did a first mate. I did a custom GBT as a first mate, and this was a year ago.
Yeah. So you've made a virtual first mate.
I did. I did. And I thought I kept thinking about this could just be better. I love the idea of sensor fusion. I love the idea of everything that's happening right now in the industry. And I just can't wait for it to catch up with what I think we should be doing.
Yeah. So, obviously, FarSounder, we're not AI enabled, but our sensors being, having the forward-looking sonar incorporated with other sensors that then is maybe being processed by an overall AI model. That's where, I guess people will potentially start to develop going forward.
Absolutely. And I really do foresee, and you mentioned this a little bit, but I do want to highlight that piece of it before we get on to the buoy run, is that the benefit that Tesla and the cars have in terms of, doing autonomous driving is that they have thousands and thousands of hours of data to help them with this. We don't have that yet in marine. And I think, when we think about that, and it was actually someone that worked at Tesla, he'd been at Tesla for 14 years, and I met at an AI conference, and he explained to me why that they're so far ahead, because we were talking about it. And I said, it's amazing to me that, the marine industry is a little farther behind. And he said, well, you think about it, it's about the data. And he said, we have so much more data collected. We have so much more availability of the data. We have cameras on the cars, and we've got, sort of lanes and all these things that are sort of more stable, not stable, but they're
and they
more
operate as
known.
A connected network, which
Correct.
we just don't. I mean, yes, this is what by opting in to become part of our global data collection, we are creating a global fleet.
Yes.
Purely because we want to make the world a better place. We want to be able to provide this data and mapping, because then it makes it safer for everybody out there on the sea, either those dwelling in it for whales, or those who, use it for their livelihoods, or those that enjoy it. However we want to be in or around the sea, if it's safer for all, then it's a much better place. And by updating these charts that, as I said, some coastal areas haven't ever had the benefit of modern charting or any form of modern technology recording anything to do with our coastal areas, which is just kind of quite insane, really.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, it's a very dynamic environment. Like if a road collapse, you're going to know about it right away. It's going to be on national news. If a channel changes, only people that know are locals, or if you're going in and out of that channel all the time. So it's not getting the national news, not like, oh my gosh, this shipping channel completely was, restructured or, changed because of this massive nor'easter that went through. It doesn't happen the same way it does for roads. For road collapse, even a rural area, it's on the national news.
Yeah. Yeah. Very true.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, so you ready for the lightning round?
Come on then, let's go.
Okay. So this is just a reminder to everyone. This is we really like to do kind of quick, I call it the buoy run, because I love rodeo, number one. Number two, I love boating contests where they come in and they do these docking contests where they go screaming out, they hit a buoy and they come turn around back in and they dock and they spin around, sort of like a barrel race, a barrel. Okay. So I always think about like boat rodeo. So, but it's just a quick action, a set of questions really meant to just kind of do it off the cuff kind of thing. So the first question is, you're making a midnight passage through a narrow, uncharted waters, and would you rather have 100% accurate 3D, and this may be biased for you, 3D forward-looking sonar rendering the underwater terrain, or an ultra-high definition AI thermal vision suite scanning above the waterline? Like my little bill.
Well, yes. I think I would want to know what lies beneath, especially if it's in uncharted. I would want to be having my 3D underwater vision showing me the way. Obviously, ultimate answer would be to have both, because we just discussed that, the more sensors collecting data, the better. But, I guess not seeing what's underneath is probably going to be pretty dramatic if you hit it. Whereas hopefully you have some vision up on deck with a pair of binoculars that you might be able to see without the night vision.
Yeah, I figured. Well, I mean, I did say midnight. So, I mean, really, the night vision.
It is clear. Is it foggy?
Yeah, I know. A lot of conditions in boating. So
I'm
next
going
question.
With clear, beautiful, full moon. So I want to see what's underneath, and I use my binoculars above.
Yeah, there you go. If you can instantly, the next question is sort of, an engineering wish. If you could instantly eliminate one physical constraint of marine acoustics or sonar that interferes with your sonar, would it be the air bubbles we talked about? Would it be thermoclines or acoustic ambient noise, or any other thing that I haven't mentioned? Like, what would that be that you could eliminate as a hull boundary?
So for me, again, probably biased, because I think it would be really nice to solve the issue of the bubbles and the wash. So it would be great if we could, because a lot of the other things, in terms of noise and what have you, is minimally affected. So for us and our technology, being able to really differentiate some of these. I mean, it's better that it picks it up than it doesn't, but to get to the next level, remove these air bubbles would be great.
Yeah, you had kind of mentioned that, so it's a little sneak preview on that one. So I did write these questions ahead of time, so we kind of talked about some of them. So last one is true or false. By the year 2030, which ironically is sort of the same, I should say 2031, but no one wants to do, odd number math. So if you active 3D forward-looking sonar will be as standard on all offshore vessels as marine radar is today.
Well, I'd like to think that, yes, it would be true. And I think with the momentum that we're starting to build up and the places that people are wanting to go, and perhaps just, vessels having to operate in areas of conflict where there's now, things under the water that you can't see, you can't predict, then yes, I would like to say that in not that long away, actually, 2030, that people will recognize that it's as useful as radar.
Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of more technology in the next 5 years is going to hit the helm, and a lot of, I wouldn't say standard, but it's going to be, one of those things that if you like radar is, if you have it, you have to have it turned on.
Yeah. It's the
So that's the
evolution.
rule.
Yeah. So it's I think it's going to be the evolution of the bridge. We're now getting access to so much better technology. And in that it becomes more useful, because don't forget, data's wonderful, but data's only useful if it's the right data being processed in the right way.
Right. As Mark Twain always said, garbage in, garbage out. Or I say garbage in, garbage out. He just said, there's lies and there's statistics. So.
And those can be manipulated however which way you want.
All right. Well, Alexia, thank you so much for charting the future of underwater perception with us today and showing us how everyday navigation directly powers the global mapping of our planet's oceans, and for making us better captains, fleet managers, or owners looking into the integrated technology that FarSounder Argos 3D FLS can make its way into our helm array. And if you're more interested into the technologies, please head over to farsounder.com or reach out to Alexia. She's on, I know you're on LinkedIn, and I'm sure you're on other platforms as well, but I'm sure you can find her. She's easy to reach. Thank you for that too, Alexia, making yourself easy to reach. But it's been a pleasure talking to you about your 3D perception technology and how we can transform the bridge into less anxious space. And we can use these advancing tools to take away some of that stress and provide better safety for both underwater and above water. So thank you so much. And I appreciate your time today on the AI Captain's Log.
A real pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the AI Captain's Log. You can find me on YouTube, Apple Podcast, Pocket Cast, and Spotify. And if you find me on YouTube, please be sure to subscribe. Thanks so much, and happy boating.